Hello Aqua friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and I have two painting options for you today. First, let's talk about supplies. I used Arches watercolor paper and some tape to tape down my paper, pencil for sketching. I also used stencils, flat brushes for my wash. I like to use a fan brush for flicking on texture and then a round brush. Some of the colors that I used were yellow ochre, quinacridone gold, iso yellow deep, burnt sienna, quinacridone sienna, rose madder, burnt umber, and sepia. All right, let's get started. The first option is working with a masking film in order to paint around some leaves for the negative painting technique. I'm starting off with my first layer wet on wet watercolor technique and adding in the autumn colors that I chose. So I have some beautiful yellows, oranges, and some pinks. While my paper is wet, I'm dropping in some splatters of water and paint for some texture, and I let it completely dry. Next, I'm adding in this masking film that I made. I just cut out shapes of leaves, kind of stacked these papers together to cut out my shapes of leaves, and I'm leaving lots of space in between, and then I can immediately go in with my second layer of paint. Now the reason why I like this method better is because it's faster, I have cleaner edges, and you can maintain a fluidity with your watercolors by getting your wash down quickly and all of it being wet on wet. I could also create textures in between my layers, which you cannot do with the original method of doing negative watercolor painting. Working in this manner, once your paper is dry between layers, you're adding more leaves and you're adding more layers of paint, and your layers will get darker and darker as you go along. Now this is the same technique that I used for my watercolor Christmas card last year, which I share some tips and tricks on how to get these clean edges only on my full-length video, which is available on my website for premium members. It's sort of like my tip jar. It's only $2 a month. You could quit anytime. There's no long-term commitments. So if you are curious about wanting to watch that video in order to get the really clean techniques and find out all the supplies that I used, then please click the link in the description below. It will bring you to the sign up page, and you can sign up there to get this content. And if you do choose to sign up, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like I said, this does help me to pay for the costs of making content for you folks. And as a premium member, I'll just go through with you some of the benefits is that I will send you a newsletter once a month. Once a month, I will also provide an extra painting only available through premium membership. It won't be on my YouTube site. And you can also leave comments on my blog posts when you're a premium member. Any sketches that I have for my YouTube videos will only be available through the premium membership. So I'm excited about this big step. So here's this last layer I just finished, and I'm doing the big reveal, taking off all these stickers, and look at these beautiful jewel tone colors. This would make a fantastic autumn card. It is real pretty. I hope you enjoyed this version of negative painting. And now we're on to the next and traditional version, doing the same beginnings of wet on wet watercolor technique. I'm using a stencil for my oak leaves because, well, I have to draw lots of oak leaves. Now, this traditional method is a lot slower because I have to paint around all these shapes carefully in order to preserve this leaf shape. So I have to work in small areas, wetting it first and then dropping in my colors. Because I can't quickly do the whole thing wet on wet, I have to jump around my canvas and do areas that are not touching so I don't get blooms. Another tip is you can dry the area as you move on. If you don't mind having blooms, then you don't have to do that step and you can just go about painting these different areas. I'm carefully painting around my first layer of leaves. Once your first layer of leaves is dry, you could draw in your second layer of leaves where there is space to do so. So the layering process is the same. The only thing different is we can't just put our brush right across the paper because they're not essentially masked out. We're essentially painting around these shapes. So with each layer, you will have more vibrant colors and you will have more contrast. So it's up to you how many layers that you want to put on. I think I did 4 to 5 layers actually with this second painting, which I, in hindsight, wish I didn't, because in the end I didn't really care for it. And it really took a long time, I have to say, having to paint in this manner where you're carefully painting around all the edges took a long time. I actually repurposed this painting for another project in the end, but that's another story and another video. Another point to make here is that you also cannot splatter texture on these layers because it would get, of course, onto the other leaves that aren't masked out, and so the effect would be ruined. Oh, I also have another announcement. I have my Amazon store now where you can visually see my supplies that I use and my favorite tools and watercolor supplies. So I've included the link for that in the description below. So here's a picture of what I have so far, and that's where I should have stopped, but I went ahead to do another layer. I also felt that my top layer was looking pretty light and I wanted to warm up those leaves a little bit, so I put a glaze of yellow over top. We're in the home stretch here, folks. I'm adding some of my darkest layers, and like I said, the more layers you do, well, the more busy it gets, and that was one of the reasons I didn't end up liking it as much. So if you're still here at the end of my video, I thank you, thank you, thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you guys next week.